So, let's see. I'll start with mentioning someone once said to me that there are two kinds of people in the world. There are the people who say that there are two kinds of people in the world, and the rest of us who don't. Which I'll get back to in a little bit, but I want to take you back a little bit to 1977, and I'll tell you a story from that time there. In 1977, just to remind you, I don't know where you were, everybody has their own story, some of us weren't here yet, but for those of us who don't remember 1977, let me refresh your memories. It was the year that the Coneheads debuted on Saturday Night Live. And it was, Muhammad Ali was still boxing, he beat Ernie Shavers. It was the year that Apple incorporated and released its Apple II computer in 1977. It was the year that Star Wars was released. It was the year that Annie Hall was released. And it was the year that 130 Muslims took over 3 buildings in Washington, D.C. and 12 Muslims took over 3 buildings in Washington, D.C. and held 130 hostages and killed 1 man and shot Marion Barry, the councilman at the time. You remember from later on from his cocaine use and when he was mayor. There was a Hanafi incident. Anyway, it was also the year that in Washington, D.C., they passed legislation prohibiting sexual discrimination for not only gender, but also sexual preference in private employment, 1977. And it was the year that a protester threw a cream pie in the face of Anita Bryant. If you remember that. She was the spokesperson for the orange juice industry, and she was really outspoken anti-gay, and so she then became the target of a lot of venom from gay rights supporters people. At any rate, 1977 was a big year for me too. Way back, I had gone to Europe for 3 months in the early part of the year. Just before that, the year before, I had woken up one morning and was scratching my right eye, and I couldn't see, and the left eye was strange, and I went through the day thinking I had dust in my eye. I went to the doctor the next day, an optometrist, and he said, "You need surgery immediately." I had a detached retina, and I had a tearing retina, and at 22 years old, I was in danger of losing my vision permanently. So I spent 2 weeks in the hospital bandaged up, and at the end of the 2 weeks, I decided that I need to go to Europe as soon as possible to see something of the world, because I may not ever be able to see. And amazingly, my vision's been good all these years. But anyway, I had decided at that time that I was going to go to Europe, so in 1977 I backpacked around, I fell in love, and finished up my last 3 credits that summer in college, and now I was ready to hit the job market. Only I was trained as a high school teacher, junior high school teacher, and I couldn't find a job. So what to do? I had an aunt living in Brooklyn at the time, Polish immigrants, like my parents, my mom and sister, and she said, "Peter, why don't you go to the employment agency, the temporary holiday agency? If you find a job and if they like you, you can get a long-time job." So it's, oh, okay, I know someone there. And so I went to the holiday temporary agency and I did a typing test. We had typing in school back then. And I had a typing test and I scored 40 words per minute, which is, yay, that was the bottom minimum requirement. So at least I got the 40 words a minute. And at the end of the day, I was not really ready for a typing kind of position, but that was okay. My first 2 weeks I worked at the Paragon Sporting Goods Company at the door, checking people's bags. And that was good, it was 2 weeks, it was fun. After that, they then moved me to the next job, and I had to show up that Monday morning at 1 Liberty Plaza. The company is Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Fenner, and Smith. We're talking 1977, Wolves of Wall Street. And I show up, and I'm greeted by a neighborhood guy, actually, who's now working at Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Fenner, and Smith. And he escorts me up from the front desk where he met me to the 49th floor. He introduced me to my office. I had a great view of the Woolworth building in Manhattan. And this was great. I was on Wall Street. I had my own office. And my job was to compare two computer printouts. Remember, this is 1977. There was one that was about 2 feet tall. There was another one that was about 1.5 feet tall. And I had to simply compare the National Bank of Westminster, the Allianz Bank, this bank, that bank, and compare all the numbers and just make sure the computer didn't lie, that the numbers were right, for 11 weeks. So, the next day when I showed up to that job, I brought a little radio so I could keep working. And I turned on WNEW, the rock and roll station. I was listening to the radio and enjoying the music and working away, comparing these numbers. And suddenly, a guy shows up from the Treasury Department, the office next door, and he says, would you mind turning that radio off? And I said, actually, I wouldn't mind. It's really helping my pace here. It's helping me work. And he just turned around, looked at me, and turned around and left. And a few minutes later, the guy who hired me came in. He said, did you just tell J.B. Golden that you wouldn't turn your radio off? And I said, yeah, I guess. And he said, you are so lucky. He was just told off by the CEO of this company because he fires people on the spur of the moment, just like that. And it was just last week he was told, stop doing that. I was like, whew, okay. So a few minutes later, I met other people showing up saying the same thing. Did you just tell J.B. Doty you wouldn't turn off your music? And so I became kind of famous in that office as the guy who talked back to J.B. Doty. This is the guy who had a big framed painting of the USS North Carolina on his wall. He could have had any art in the world working for Merrill Lynch Investment at that time, and he had the USS North Carolina on his wall. So as I kind of got comfortable with the job and with the music and doing my checking, I started using the telephone in the office a little bit. And I was calling my girlfriend that I had met in Europe, and she was in Montreal. And we were still in love with each other, and I wanted to see how she was doing, so I'd call her. And then the next day, I'd call her at work, and then one day I called her, and back then, I had just checked her biorhythm. We had a thing called biorhythms back then that was popular. And you could find out from someone's birthday if they were together on a certain date. Now, you would look at their physical and their emotional and their physical, emotional, mental strength. And she was bottomed out. She was 0. It was like the worst day. Now, I don't believe in parapsychology. I'm a doctor's son, and I grew up with science. And so I called her anyway, and she answered the phone. Hello? I said, Pierrette, are you okay? She said, no. I said, what's going on? She said, I don't know. It's amazing. I just checked your biorhythms, and this is the worst day of the year for you. And she started laughing, and it was great, and it worked. So, like, the next day, another fellow from the Treasury Department shows up at my office, and he said, excuse me, bud, did you call someone in Canada? And I said, yeah, that's my girlfriend, and up in Montreal. And he said, oh, okay, well, yeah, my boyfriend's down in Miami, and I call him from here all the time. And I said, oh, okay. And he said, yeah, just try to keep it, down a little bit, because they keep, we're responsible for all the phone calls, and that's my job. So, it's cool, but, just don't do it too much. And so I thought, what a nice guy. It's really nice. He was a 35-year-old businessman working at the Treasury Department. His name was Bob Castelletto. And he was just the nicest guy. And then as I got to know him, we started, chatted, and I told him that I was, studying French at Hunter College. I had traveled, and he was like, "Oh, I really want to learn French. It'd be great." And I said, "Okay." So I visited his home a couple of times. His beautiful apartment, taught him some French. Got to know him a little bit better. Had lunches, from work once in a while. He was an older guy, 35. I was 23. He was really old back then, and a very, very, conservative, regular business kind of guy, because he was working with a guy from USS North Carolina, it was that kind of atmosphere there. So we got to know each other better, and as we did, we opened up a little bit more towards each other. And he was like, well, he was gay, and he was in New York City, and it was 1977. And the gay community in 1977 in New York was like kids in a candy shop, because this is like 3 or 4 years before anyone had yet to hear of AIDS. 77 had bathhouses all around. There were bars like the Anvil on the Lower West Side, in what's now called the Meat Market, actually. The Anvil, where, I can't even tell you in front of, big crowd what happens at the Anvil, but, you get the idea. New York was Sodom and Gomorrah back in 77. And Bob brought me to my first gay bar, and then as I got into a conversation with someone, left me there. It's like, what? One of those things. But he was great, and as I got to know him, then we opened up. So at one point he told me that he was a little bit, he wasn't so great that day, and I said, "What's going on?" And he said, "Well, I have this side job." He said, "Okay." He says, "I'm a pimp." It's like, he's working the financial district and he's a pimp. I said, "Okay." He says, "Yeah, I have, my main client is Sheba." And Sheba was a black woman who was a dominatrix that he got an apartment for. And he set her up in the apartment, he got her a phone call, and Sheba was his client, or his, whatever you call it, his protege. And so Sheba would answer the phone like, "I'm gonna kick your ass, who is this?" And he would say, it's me, Sheba." It's like, we're talking business here, okay. "Oh, okay." So there was Sheba, and he also had a friend named Mitch. And these were kind of on the outside, these people, but in his candy shop world, it was all, everything was kind of fun and cool. Until he then continued with the story that they had taken him to an apartment in Soho, and he thought they were going to have some fun, so he let them tie him up. And now he's tied up, and this is the straight-looking guy in the Treasury Department, Merrill Lynch. He's tied up, and they said, "You can scream as loud as you want to," because back then no one lived in Soho. And so you can scream as loud as you want to. He was tied up there. They took out heroin. They cooked the heroin in the needle in the spoon, and they held the needle over him, and he was bare naked, tied up, and this was not what he expected. And now they were going to inject him with heroin, and he was just crying and begging, and they didn't. They didn't do anything. They finally let him go, and they had a good laugh over it. But at the end of the day, he decided he would let them go. He couldn't work with them anymore, and that was the end of that part of his life. He then went on to start something called Christopher Street Investors that catered to the gay community in New York, and that was quite successful. And he also was an advisor for me and opened me up to a whole other world that he was living in. And his legacy still is with me today, because he was a very good friend of mine, and I lost track of him as time went by. And this is again before the internet and before it was easy to keep track with people as it is today. And I lost track, and when I went to look him up again, I found that he was gone. He had died of AIDS, and I didn't even know. And it really it's very sad to me because the last time I saw him, I gave him a kiss on the cheek and we had a nice lunch, and I introduced him to Yumiko, my wife. And it meant a lot that she met him. And so, to go back to my original point when I said that there are two kinds of people in this world, it's not that I don't feel that there are two kinds of people so much anymore. I think we're people. But one thing I do know is that there are two kinds of friends. And we have friends that we become friends with, or they become friends with us because we share things. We look alike, we dress alike, we maybe eat the same foods, or go to the same places, or like the same music, or think the same. And then we have friends who sometimes just life throws us together with someone that's really different, and that's really challenging, and that we fight with and argue with, and sometimes that makes life difficult for us. But those are the friends that you really get value from in life. And I just wanted to share that with you. I guess we'll stop right here. Thanks very much.
Thank you.